Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hi, I'm Steve Miletto from the Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey EduMagicians, it's Sam, and before we start into this episode, I want to share with you about an amazing resource. It's called the Educator Candidate Member Portal. AAEE provides you with resources such as virtual job fairs, a job board, interview tips and prep, resume building, webinars. You can even get a copy of the Job Search Handbook digitally. So head on over to aaee.org and create your free Educator Candidate Member account today. Friends, one more thing before we get started. This episode is brought to you by my new course, Digital Portfolios from Scratch to Interview Ready. Head on over to sfessich.com/courses for more information about this self-paced, hands-on virtual workshop. It's Dr. Sam, and I'm so excited to share with you tips and strategies to help you reframe and rethink going from fieldwork to student teaching, because it really is a different ballgame. We're going to talk about 4 important things. Relationships first, finding your style, your teaching presence, and all that stuff is a little tricky. We're going to talk about some strategies to help you find that. Get organized, and self-care, something I wished I learned more about whenever I was a future teacher. So let's start with building relationships. We're going to have 3 main areas. We're going to talk about building relationships with your mentor or cooperating teacher, building relationships with your colleagues, and then building relationships with your students. So really quick, let's start with a quote. You just can't build a relationship, you must maintain it. This isn't a first day thing, it's an all year thing. So what I mean by that is when we build those relationships, maybe you do an introduction activity or a get to know you activity on the first day of classes, or the first week of classes, we do some different get to know you things. This isn't something that begins and ends that first day of class, that first week of class. It's something that continues to develop and continues to grow as you grow with your students. So continue to learn about your students, continue to grow with them. So let's talk about relationships, and we'll start with mentor-teacher. So it's important to connect and introduce yourself. This is usually done initially through an email. So read through that email before you click send. Make sure you have Dear Mr. So-and-so or Dear Miss So-and-so. Describe who you are, what university you're working with, what class you're going in for. You're going for fieldwork, clinical, you're going in for student teaching. Explain a little bit about who you are as a teacher, maybe a little bit about those expectations, and sign off with your first and last name. So that's a great way to start that professional conversation through an email. Also read it over, have a friend read it over. You might even want to CC your professor on there just so everyone's in the loop there, because we're all better together. Then when it's time to talk about those expectations, if you're in a field course or a clinical course, you might have expectations set up from the professor, but I also want you to think about expectations for yourself as a future teacher. What are some areas in which you glow? What are some areas in which you grow? And what are some ways you're going to get to those growing areas during this experience? So share about your expectations, have the cooperating teachers share about theirs as well. It's also important to not only build relationships with your mentor teacher, but also your colleagues. So what do I mean by that? Principal, secretary, custodian, nurses, physical therapy, occupational therapy, support staff. You're going to also want to get to know educators that are in the same subject area or grade level which you'll be student teaching. Actually go in and introduce yourself to the principal or the secretary. Don't just walk right into the school with your head down and go right to the classroom. Actually introduce yourself, knock on the door, say, hi, my name is Ms. Hirochak. I'm really excited to be working with Mr. Ondash during my 7-week student teaching placement. Thank you so much for hosting me. I'm looking forward to learning from this experience. And just see where it goes from there. Make sure you introduce yourself to the secretary and the custodian as well. These are great people to get to know during your student teaching experience. It'll just help you make those connections. Let's talk about students, getting to know our students. Like I said, it's not just a first week, first day kind of thing. We got to build those relationships. That's important, but we also have to maintain them. So some ways to do it is connecting through games. Maybe do a this or that activity, or would you rather, using Jamboard or a four corners type activity with your students, having them connect with each other, connect with you, and vice versa. Ask them questions, and notice things about them. So as they walk into the space, notice their shoes, notice their shirt, make a comment about, hey, I really like that band, or, oh, I love that color shoe, or I noticed you got a haircut, or wow, are those new glasses, whatever it might be. Just notice things about each of your students. And what I encourage you to do is have a little spreadsheet or something where you can document. I want you to make connections with each student individually the whole week and document, because sometimes it feels like, oh, I'm making connections with all my students, when in reality, maybe out of a class of 15, you're only making connections with 10 of them. And so by documenting, hey, I noticed so-and-so, I noticed Fred, Lucy, Ethel, and Ricky today. Document what you did, and then continue those conversations with those students, but also make connections with other students too. I also really like making connections through music, and this can be very easily done through a shared playlist, or have students request songs as they come into class. It can be doing a traditional learning space or a virtual learning space, so have them request music, and you can make connections that way too. Oh, I really like that band, or I never heard this song before. Oh, I really like the beat here, whatever it might be. So you can make those connections too. And I encourage you to greet every student by name, learn how to pronounce their name, learn their pronouns, what they want to be called. Like if they have a nickname, so for example, instead of Samantha, they want to be called Sam. Make sure you make note of that. And I want you to try to know every student's name by the end of the week. This is going to be so helpful when it comes to creating content for your students, because you know their names, and you can greet them by name, and you can ask them questions by name. And this is just a very powerful strategy. All right, let's talk about finding your teaching presence. Oh, this is so important. I think sometimes when we go into classes, it can be like, well, I was taught this way, or my field teacher did this, so I have to do it this way. But really finding your own presence is so important. So we're going to talk about being you in the classroom. You are the only, insert your name here, there is. So you got to show up for your students as you. So if you're not the type of person who doesn't smile till Christmas, don't be that person. Smile the first day. So let's talk about how are some ways we can start to find your style. I have 3 ways: observing, taking risks, and reflecting. Observation. So during your first few days of student teaching, I know it can be a long day if you're sitting in the back observing students. That's why it's important to set those expectations and talk to your cooperating teacher. Say, what are some ways these first few days that I can help you? What are some ways I can serve you? What are some ways I can get to know students, or lead a small group or something like that? Get in front of students, do some teaching. But when you are observing, observe with purpose. So go in with a plan. So what are some things you want to look at? Check out their procedures for homework, for attendance, for lunch count, for permission slips. Where do students find the content for class? Where do they find a recording for class? What do they do if they missed an assignment? Whatever that means. So go in there with intention and a list of things to check out. How does your cooperating teacher group their students? How do they greet them? What are some anticipatory sets that they use? How do they assess their students during their lesson? So really go in with purpose and observe with purpose, but also go on out there and observe other teachers in your building. So whether that's teachers that teach the same grade level, or maybe if you're going to be certified pre-K to 4, see if you can observe different teachers in different grade levels. You can kind of get a feel for what it's like, because you might pick up other strategies that they use. For example, you might pick up a really cool note-taking strategy from a middle school teacher, or an ed tech tool from a kindergarten teacher that you might want to put in your own teacher tool belt. Another really nice way to find your style is to try something new and let your students know that you're trying something new and your co-op. Ask them, be like, hey, you know what? I learned about this really cool tool called Jamboard. I have some ideas of how I'm going to use it for an anticipatory set. Can I run that by you? And I want to try it out with our own students, maybe on Friday. So let them know you want to try something new. Let them know why. Why will it help your students? And more than likely, they will let you try something out. So I encourage you to do so. Next up, reflect. Now we know that we got to reflect on our lessons. What went well? What didn't go well? And all those usual things. But be more thoughtful in your reflection when it comes to looking at the week as a whole. So, what were some goals that you had this week? Did you want to try out grouping with your students? Did you want to make sure you got feedback on their paper to them by the middle of the week? Did you want to make sure you had started on your unit plan for the week ahead, or look at the curriculum, or whatever it might be? So set a goal and track how you did with that goal for that week. So each Sunday night or Monday morning, sit down with your cup of coffee or cup of tea and decide, what are my goals that I want for myself this week? And then use that week at the end of the week to reflect on that. By making goals to yourself, you're able to track that progress and go back and reflect on them. How did I do? What would I do differently? Those types of things. Again, another goal I suggest is make connections with your students during the week and document those connections. You're going to want to also reflect on your lesson planning, because that's always a great thing to do as student teachers. Not only reflect on the planning and the delivery, did my students understand the objective? Were they tied to standards? How was my assessment? Think about timing, pacing. I want you to think about what are some areas that you glow and which you grow, and that in which you need to grow. And then think about, where can I find more information to help me grow in that area? So if you want to learn more about Breakout EDU, perhaps go to the Breakout EDU site, check out some webinars, check out some podcasts, read a blog post, and then plan to execute creating a breakout for your class one day. And remember, friends, document your learning. So important. Document what you're learning about, whether it's bullet points or in a blog of some sort, which looks great on your digital portfolio. Document what you're learning so you can go back and reflect upon that as well. Now, let's talk about getting everything organized. Oh my goodness. So I encourage you, set up some organization now, because your future self will really thank you. So kind of like How I Met Your Mother and the future Ted and future Marshall's problem, don't leave it to them to get organized. Get organized now. It'll only help you in the long run. So schedule, let's talk about that. You're going to want to get yourself an agenda or a schedule. There's just, putting a plug in here for the Future Teacher Planner. It's available at EduMatch Publishing. There's also a link here you can check out. You can use that to organize yourself. Make sure there's stuff in there. If you're organizing yourself, make sure you have a calendar with monthly, weekly, daily content where you're putting in there those important dates. When are your classes? What are important events? Do you have meetings that you have to go to? Practicum, those types of things. So thinking about organizing yourself on a calendar basis, and organize your student teacher binder. Oh my goodness. So many times I get asked, what do I need to put in here? What's required? There really is no hard and fast list. There's just, here's some of my suggestions. So make sure you have your calendars. Make sure you have a section for your lesson plans. And if you have lesson plans for multiple sections, multiple subjects, separate that. So lesson plan for math, lessons for science, lesson for social studies, or multiple sections, you can put that there. Have a section for your standards. And a pro tip, why don't you grab, instead of printing out all those standards, so much to print, I want you to grab a QR code and create a list. Standards for science that have a QR code that goes right to your state standards for that. And you can print those out on a one-pager. So then you can just scan that QR code and you don't have to waste a lot of paper. Contact information for your cooperating teacher, for your college supervisor. Make sure you have that information. List of procedures that you're going to want to make sure you observe. And this is a great one to have extra loose paper with, so you can, jot down those great ideas. Class list, and with your class list, include things like preferences, nicknames, any notes about that student. Grades or feedback or a grade book, something like that. And there's a lot more you can add to that binder. If you want more information about that, please DM me over on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is @sfessich, and I will be happy to share more. To organize the handouts. So some of you are going to have co-ops that are like, here's all my information, here's my PDFs, here's my worksheets, here's this, here's that. Oh, it gets so overwhelming. So let's organize it with Office Lens. So grab Office Lens, an app you can download on your phone, and take a picture of that physical product. You can then organize it in OneDrive. You can save it as a JPEG. You can save it as a PDF. You can even save it as a Word doc. So if somebody is like, hey, can you use this worksheet that I've used before, but the font needs updated and some of the words need updated, and can you add some new pictures? You can take a picture of that worksheet, save it as a Word doc, and then open it up in Word, and you can adjust all those things, and it pulls all the text out for you, which is fantastic, saving you lots of teacher time. And then there's two tools I want to share with you. If you have those PDFs, those worksheets that you want to make digital, two tools you need to check out are TeacherMade and EduElastic. You can upload your PDFs right there and make them interactive worksheets. If you're creating interactive worksheets from scratch, definitely check out Wizer. That's Wizer, for you to create your own individual digital tests that includes like matching, labeling images, fill in the blank, essay response, multiple choice, true and false, questions about videos, all those things. And then organize your content digitally. So make folders and folders. So for example, I have a folder called 2021 Spring Semester, and in there I have a list of all my classes in folders. And in each folder I have weeks for each of the 14 weeks in the semester. So I encourage you to do the same. Organize yourself so then you can start putting stuff in digital buckets. As you get information, you start putting stuff in those digital buckets. So if you take a picture of a science handout, you can upload that into your OneDrive folder that's for science, and then you have all that stuff digitally. All right, next up, self-care. Oh my goodness, self-care is something I wish I learned more about as a future teacher to implement more, because this is an area that I think it gets glossed over, and this is something that we need to be careful with and be intentional with. So self-care is important no matter how long you've been an educator. If you've been in there for 10 years, 20 years, or if you're just starting out, self-care is something you need to do. So first, schedule it in. Actually, get that calendar out. Remember the one from your student teacher binder? Get that out and schedule in self-care time. What does that look like? Does it look like taking a walk? Does it look like listening to a podcast, watching Netflix or Hulu? Does it look like cooking your favorite meal, journaling, reflecting, spending time with a Bible study, or just relaxing? What does self-care look for you? And for a lot of people, self-care is a journey. So you're not going to find maybe the right fit right away. So it's all about trying new things, and thinking and reflecting about that. Did that help me relax? Did that make me feel good about myself? Do I feel stronger for that? So think about some areas that you enjoy and schedule those in each week, if not each day. Get some sleep. Sleep is so important. It helps our minds. It helps our well-being. It just helps us in general. So get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, and whatever time you have to wake up in the morning, back up a couple hours so you can get to bed on time. And set those boundaries, friends. Set those boundaries so you are able to, maybe put your phone, turn off notifications, put your phone on the other side of the room, unplug the hour before bed, and just, go to sleep. Next is get ready for the day. So whether you're teaching virtually, hybrid, or in a traditional learning space, you got to get ready for the day, right? So actually get up, get ready, get dressed, be the professional, just like the professional that you are, so you are ready to go and start your day. We already talked about this next one a little bit, tracking your goals, tracking your achievements. Do that, because in the future teacher binder, we have a spot just for achievements, for you to document your achievements, and things that you're looking forward towards during that month, during that semester. So track those goals. Make learning goals for yourself. So think about, what are some areas in which I want to grow this year, this semester? Maybe you want to add 5 things to your digital portfolio over this semester. And so really put your heart into creating content that's gonna make you proud, that you're gonna want to share a future employer. So track those learning goals. And lastly, journal. Journaling has been so helpful for me personally. You can journal gratitude thankfulness, maybe verses or lyrics of a song. It doesn't have to be a Dear Diary type thing, but it can be something that you use as a reflection piece to get to know yourself more. All right, and let's recap. We talked about 4 main things to help you get ready for student teaching, building those relationships, finding your style, getting it organized, and self-care. For any questions, comments, concerns, or compliments, you can drop them to me over on Twitter or Instagram at @sfessage, and I look forward to connecting with you there. Have a great day, and remember, you have the EduMagic within you.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram at sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.